questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing. All right, Amy.
I just wanted to point out 4 things, just my own observation that helped me along. Because like the first half of this walk, I was trying to figure it out on my own, my sister and I and different people on YouTube. And then I found your teaching came across my YouTube feed and I was like, oh, okay. So then what really, impressed me or got my attention that really helped me, like jumpstart certain things, figure out why you do what you do, and then become an expert at it.
Yep.
Yahweh allows or causes everything. We don't know what we don't know. That blew my mind, and I have learned so much because of that. Because Yahweh, nothing's impossible with him. And
Amen.
And we choose our own path. Everybody's responsible for choosing their path that they're going to walk. And so that really helps me take get your eyes off of their path and get your eyes on your own path and focus on what you need to fix. And so learning why I do what I do was scary because I had to ask Yahweh, I'm like, if there's anything in me that's keeping me from doing this. And it took me a long time to really vocalize that in prayer. Because I knew it was going to be scary, it was going to be ugly, it was going to be hurtful, whatever, but it was all worth it. And you know how we have growing pains when we're growing up, and then sometimes you have growth spurts. So I feel like I just recently came through a big growth spurt and learning about, like what Ashley was talking about. So like abandonment, learning that abandonment is about somebody withholding their love and affection from you.
Right.
So to prevent that, so like, you know how you can't go back under the Torah if you were never there. So if you let go of somebody and you're not holding on to them, then they can't abandon you. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, abandonment, you said, is, by the definition you used, is withholding love from you, right? There's probably a lot of people out there that could be withholding love from me that I don't even know who they are and really don't care. Then why would that bother me, right?
Exactly, yeah.
The problem is that you care about who is doing the withholding of the love. And some of that is because of default programming. Because we assume mom should love me. We assume dad should love me. But they don't always. A lot of you have not had that experience, right? You've had experiences the opposite. And so we feel like if they withhold love, then now we've got this abandonment thing and everything else, instead of realizing it's just a fault in them. They're not capable of giving it. It's not that they're withholding it. And if they are capable of giving it and they're withholding it, they're doing it to manipulate, to punish, to whatever other dysfunctional thing they're doing. Okay, so, but in our minds, you're like, but that's my mom. That's my dad. By default.
But they're messed up too.
They're messed up too.
And so going through the things that I've had to go through in my own life has taught me, like, compassion and forgiveness go together. And when you don't forgive somebody, I heard this, somebody said it, when you don't forgive, it's like drinking poison, hoping the other person will die.
Yes.
And so I think that's it. And then, so I tried to reconcile with somebody. I owned what I did. I apologized. And I wished if I could go change it, I would. Please forgive me. And it wasn't received very well. So if it's not reciprocated, can you just go gray rock? Because I did what I felt like I was supposed to do.
Yeah, do what you do, and then if it doesn't work out, it just doesn't work out. You can't control the outcome on the other side. You got to do your side of it.
Okay.
You know.
I think that's it. And then I have a last question. Like sometimes I don't understand hard consonant sounds. And so sometimes I wonder who these live screamers are that you're talking about.
The live screamers. They're the ones that we put in timeout because they're typing in things they shouldn't be, okay? And we bounce them off the chat. By the way, if you have family members that are really problematic, you know what? Go ahead and do a little bit of digging without stepping on toes and find out their experiences. In other words, I didn't understand my father quite as well until I realized that he thought of his father the way I thought of mine, because his father had treated him exactly the same way he treated me, okay? Which helped me to understand why he was the way he was. He chose to just continue and be this bitter because the way his father was terrible, right? Okay, so you may want to find out that there are not excuses, but reasons for why the dysfunctional family that you have is the way they are, okay? There are some reasons. And so then you may have, as Amy pointed out, compassion, okay, for that person and saying, okay, I'm not liking the way they're treating me, but I understand they're not capable of anything else because they were also broken, okay? All right, Evan.
All right. I just got one question. So it's pretty simple, but I suck at it. So anyways, it's about our thoughts. So last Torah study, you mentioned this concept called manifesting when you were talking about Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And so manifesting is like the idea that you can kind of like use positive thinking and visualization to make your goals a reality. And I think I already, like kind of know about it, but I thought it was so just corny as hell that I just like kind of just ignored it. I don't even know if that's a legitimate concept or not. But anyways, people kind of mention and use like the book of Proverbs and saying like, so a man thinketh, so shall he be. And I'm like, I don't know how accurate that is. But anyways, my question is...
it's very accurate.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, okay, but the thing is, without the details of what this actually looks like in action, it becomes a problem. So it's not like, okay, you could think all the positive thoughts you want, it's not gonna change anything. Unless you buy into that whole belief system that you're pondering and start moving in the direction of that whole deal, okay? So, because manifesting, as I told you guys, is you manifest what you are. So all the positive thinking isn't gonna do anything unless it changes who and what you are, okay? You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are, okay? And so that's a big difference, okay? So, and you manifest it because of the choices and actions. Remember we talked about a path to going this way and then you can make a change and now your path is going this way, all right? So a thought change that's dwelled on, emotions get attached to it, and then actions come out of it, and then habits come out of it, and then, right? We talked about this many, many times. Then manifest something. You're already manifesting. I don't want you to think of it in some like new agey way. You're manifesting everything in your life right now, and it's manifesting based on all your choices and who you are and what you are at the moment, all right? You start thinking differently, and then you start, because you think differently, you start acting differently, and you start making different choices, then you manifest something different. So then all of a sudden, other doors start opening. Why should Abba open a door for you that you can't go through, you're not ready for? But if you change, a door might open. That's what people are talking about in terms of manifesting things. You want this career thing or this thing or that thing, whatever it is, good. Think about it. Embrace it, become the person that has it, okay? I want a great marriage. Well, become the type of person that has a great marriage, that does their half of that, okay? You can't just say, I want a great marriage, because then you're thinking, I just want it all the way I want it, as opposed to becoming the person that has a great marriage, has abundant wealth, has a great job, has whatever, okay? Then you have to say, okay, that's the goal. I have to become the person qualified for that stuff. I have to become that person in order to manifest that, okay? It's not really, complicated. It's been just poorly described by people who teach, things like the law of attraction and everything else. Just dwell on all these things that you want and they'll just show up, and that's not the way it works. Because if they did show up and you weren't the right person for it, it wouldn't do you any good anyway. You wouldn't be ready to make use of it or take advantage of it in the right way and it'd be a benefit to you or anybody else, okay? So you have to become. How do you become? Well, you got to start by picking something you want to be or something you want to have that requires you to be a different person. You have everything in your life right now that you're qualified for. The you that you are has that life. The life you want, if it's a different life, needs you to be a different person, at least in some areas, right? You have to change to whatever degree into some different level of you to have what you don't have. That's simple. Now, when I say it's simple, the concept is, the actions of it can be a lot of work, okay? But everybody wants to only listen to these little sound bites and these memes because they want it to sound like it doesn't take any work, all right? But it does, okay? Look, when you hear me doing a lot of what I'm doing up here, like even today, and a lot of these things that have to do with scripture and personal development, because I put in thousands of hours in these areas. Thousands of them. Why? Because it's what I wanted to be and do. You know, I had a goal from the first time I learned anything about impacting people with personal development stuff that would help them positively in their life. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be like the Tony Robbins, all right? That was the first guy I heard doing this stuff, and I was like, that's what I want to do, okay? And I get to do it, just in this own little different flavor of it. But in that decision, I then started studying and learning and applying and becoming a person who can up here very confidently answer these questions and say the things that I say. You know, I didn't just like get to be a rabbi and then I now have permission to counsel people. Well, yeah, but do I know anything about counseling? Actually, I happen to know a tremendous amount about it because I've been studying it for like 50 years, okay? I had no idea that that's how it was gonna end up being used because I never wanted to counsel. Okay, I really didn't want to counsel. Okay, when I first realized doing this stuff, you know, I was gonna have to answer, you know, sit there with people and listen to all the trauma. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, I hated it. All right. Then I realized, but wait a minute, you wanted to do something that positively impacted people with all this information you got. Then my head changed on the whole thing. Okay, so now I don't hate it anymore because I realized, wait a minute, this is what you always wanted. But I had always pictured it like standing in front of a big group of people and everybody just loves everything. They run off and do everything and I don't have to deal with them. That's what Tony does, right? Because if you want him directly, you got to pay him like $50,000 for an hour, okay? And so he doesn't work with people one-on-one that way unless you got enough money for that. Because he doesn't want to do that. He wants to throw it out there like he does and let you do what you do with it. Abba put me into a more hands-on sort of thing where I kind of do the big presentation, but then I get to do the more interactive things, okay? So that was a different thing. But I had to become that person, okay? Because that's why when I come up here, it looks like it's easy for me. Well, because it is, because I've already prepared, become, studied, developed, incorporated all of this stuff so that it just naturally and easily comes out. Just like when you watch the artist, I watch sometimes these artists that are like, they have TikToks watching them from zero all the way to the finished picture, right? And I'm like, how did you just, and it just flows like without, like they're not even thinking about it, just all, but that's because of the thousands and thousands of hours they put into it, okay? Because anytime you watch anything that somebody does that's sort of masterful, but it looks like for them it's like nothing, well, because they put in all the work to get to the place where it looks like nothing, okay? But it started with wanting to be something and then becoming the person that can do it or have it or be it, et cetera, okay? All right. Hey.
So my question is basically about relationships, compassion, and understand forgiveness.
Don't have
I'm kind of going.
They blow up. They're just not worth it. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
So I kind of was convicted this morning. I was reading Matthew 22, 37 to 39. And it says that you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind. And this is the first and great command. And the second is like, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And I was thinking to myself that the basics, or Torah is basically the essence of the Father's love for us. When we do this, it's because he wants us to transform into the love that he's given us. And with the second commandment, with loving your neighbor as yourself, and that this is the greatest command, I thought to myself, is it not possible? If you don't love yourself, can you not love your neighbor?
You really, and I think this is one of the things that was mentioned by Evan, as a man thinketh, so he is, but also out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So you can't really do what you don't have, okay? If you don't love you, how are you gonna love anybody else? Okay? You can do things that look like love, but it's not gonna have the depth of reality in it because you don't even really understand it if you can't love you. Because you don't have the abundance to pour out, okay? And so just realize that that's kind of the problem, all right? Those of you that are impatient, you don't have a big pool of patience to draw out of, okay? All right, so just understand that anything you struggle with, you don't have a resource to pull out to do much of with it. You got a little bit of it and use it up real quick. Okay, so yes, in order to do these things, you have to be able to love you, to love him, to love each other, okay?
And then one other thing is that when understanding compassion, I love when you say to be your own expert, because I was using the system called the Myers-Briggs system, and I was finding out kind of who I was in it.
Right.
And I remember just before I was unconscious. I didn't understand what I was doing, or I was just reacting to certain situations. And I finally, I was like, all right, I'm gonna figure myself out. So I'm using the system, and it's showing me kind of like the way my brain is taking in information and perceiving it. And so as I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, well, I'm not that messed up. I understand why I struggle in these areas and why I'm good in these areas. But one thing I started to think, how are other people thinking? And so I felt like this is so important in this walk, that we have compassion to understand that other people are experiencing things that we may not understand. And that compassion is being able to step into their shoes and to kind of see where they're coming from.
Right.
And in forgiveness, it's like understanding that they're hurting, and they're hurting other people and themselves because they just don't understand what's going on inside themselves.
Right.
And so another question I have is where is that boundary point? How do you maintain protecting yourself, but also having the ability to step into someone else's shoes and have compassion for them, even if they're hurting you and the people around you?
All right, so as always, complex, right? You got lots of issues in the same thing. So first of all, what 4 letters are you?
An INFP.
INFP, okay. Let me think what that tells me. All right. Okay, so I'm just trying to picture you and kind of piece that together. And when you said that, when you started studying and understanding your makeup, which is introverted, intuitive, feeling, perceiving. All right, so the thing is, when you said, well, I realized I wasn't that messed up, everybody can be very messed up, but at least if you look at these kind of things, you understand why. Okay, why you struggle, which is the whole point I give you when I say own your problem, figure it out. Okay, everybody struggles, okay? There's lots of things I struggle with, and because of my studying of these things for all these years, I know exactly why I struggle. And so I have to find workarounds and everything else. I don't get quite frustrated like a lot of you do in your own lives. I get frustrated with other things, but not with myself that way, because I understand why I struggle, okay? And then if you then take what I told you with the color code, which was the idea of understanding yourself better so you can understand others better. So now I can understand, now that I understand how I struggle, I can understand why you struggle, okay? Because of your particular, makeup of your things, okay? And so, and let me just, before I get to the last one, which is what do you do to protect your boundaries, okay? The thing is, I want all of you to understand, when I had you do the colors, that was a beginning point. There's multiple very good systems out there that will break down your personality or whatever, okay? The Myers-Briggs is very different than the 4 colors, okay? I've done tons of these. And each one does find a way, usually into 4 categories, break down people that tend to be like this or this or this. But if you take like the one system, let's say you use the colors as your one system, you take that system and you can't actually say that this, and this is a blue or a yellow or a red, because it's looking at different aspects from a different perspective, okay? You know, I've done ones that were talking about being driver, expressive, amiable, and analytical, okay? It's a whole nother way of looking at things. You could say, oh, driver is like the red. Yes and no, okay? So, I mean, there's matchups, but not matchups. Okay, so it kind of gives you other ways to look at yourself is by looking at some of these other systems of labeling things, all right? So you can discern yourself a little bit differently, okay? Because what you're looking in the Myers-Briggs is looking, are you extroverted or are you introverted? Okay, then it goes, are you sensing or are you intuitive? Okay, then thinking or feeling, all right? And then are you perceiving or are you judging, okay? And then you can't even just use those words and think you know what I'm talking about, because what you may think one of those words means is not what they mean. Because what I would think judging is not necessarily what the J stands for in the judging part, according to Myers-Briggs. You gotta know what they mean by it, you know, okay? And so I'm an ENTP, okay, which would probably be obvious to anybody that knows anything about Myers-Briggs. Okay, so but I just want all of you to know that you should go out there and you know, there's so many different systems out there, and they all will help you learn a little bit more about yourself when you find out how you fit into those categories, because they're looking at different aspects of people to categorize them into different categories, right? And so what Myers-Briggs focused on is not the same thing that Taylor Hartman focused on in the colors. So you come up with slightly different ways of grouping people, okay? And so you get to learn more about some aspect of you, all right? Anyway, and so I've actually started to overlay certain things when I have people say I'm this, and I go, yeah, but you're a yellow version of that versus a red version of that. And it doesn't change your letters, you know? Because my daughter ends up with the same letters as me and says, well, how could I be the same as you? I said, because you're a yellow version of that, and I'm a red version of that, okay? And so it's just a different overlap of some of these things, okay? So this is all things to learn about yourself. So I want to encourage you to just go out there and there's so many of them. They're fun. Some of them will tell you what cartoon character you are. Some will tell you what Star Wars character you are, whatever it is. They're fun to do. But out of each one that you do, you'll learn something about yourself, which will help you also then learn something about other people, okay? Because it's gonna focus on whatever it chose to focus on, which will be a little bit different than the other ones did, okay? Just kind of putting that out there. Okay, now your other problem is this. People only have the ability to hurt you to the extent that you allow yourself to be entangled with them, okay? So call that empathy, where you start to feel what they feel. All right? So as long as I keep a boundary that allows me to interact with you and still feel for you without feeling it with you, okay? I can understand you're in pain. I could even feel that you're in pain. I just don't want to feel that pain. Because now I'm entangling myself with you in a level that will then be putting me at risk to get hurt in a different way. So I can have lots of empathy for you without being entangled. You have to find that boundary of empathy. I feel, in other words, I can see you're in pain and I can feel that. But I don't want to feel it with you. I'm feeling that you're feeling it, so I can relate to that you're actually in pain. See, when I deal with couples and things like that, you know, one of the things I have them do always is this idea of validation. And all validation is saying, I can see and understand that that's how you feel. It doesn't mean I agree with it. I'm not saying it's valid. I'm just validating that, like the husband says this or the wife says that. I said, did you receive that? Well, I think she's wrong. It doesn't matter. Do you understand and validate that that is how she feels? Or that is how he feels, right? And so that's a level of empathy where I can say, okay, I can actually feel and know and recognize that that is how you feel. So I can be there more substantively for you. I can help you a little bit more. But if I start to really get fully empathetic, then I'm gonna feel the same feelings you have. Now I'm gonna be just as angry or just as this. That's where your girlfriend comes to you and tells you about how bad her husband is, and now you hate him too. You don't even know if what she's telling you is true. But she's angry and hates him, so now you're angry and hate him. because you didn't have a boundary to say, I understand that you hate him right now, okay? So I'm not ignoring that and just saying, I don't know what's wrong with you. No, I get it. I'm hearing you, I'm receiving that whole stuff, and I can have that level of empathy up to a point. So you have to set boundaries. The question you had was, how do I keep safe in that whole mix? You have to set boundaries. So you can't have no empathy. You can't have no sympathy, because then you'd be of no use to anybody, okay? You just look as a cold, harsh person who just doesn't care about anything. But you have to have that boundary. So Elder can tell you, he watches me do this like every counseling. I have lots of empathy and sympathy. People don't think that until they come and do it, but I have tons of it, but I don't allow it to suck me into it. So I'm not going to feel what you feel, no matter how hard you try. And sometimes people try really hard to get you to feel what they feel. But I will completely embrace that that's what you feel. That you are feeling that feeling, okay? People without the empathy are like, why do you feel that way? I don't understand why you feel that way. Because they can't validate that you actually do, because they wouldn't. If I wouldn't, then why would you? But with empathy, I validate that you feel that way, even though it's something I'm not feeling. Okay? Did that help? All right, good.
And one more thing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So understanding that hurt other people, and that in that, how do we,
Okay, so take that hurt people thing, which is exactly what I said. Figure out whoever's hurting you, what happened to them. Because there's probably a hurt person hurting you, right? Isn't that what I said earlier, right?
So in that, like, and understand that hurt people, and that we can do it as well. Like, if we're hurting, we can unconsciously hurt another person. How do we deal? Or consciously, yeah. How should we kind of reconcile in that? Is it in like, all right, I unconsciously hurt you, I need to come to you, talk to you, tell you what I did, to ask for forgiveness because this was me out of a hurt place?
Okay, so let's take forgiveness the way, remember how I taught it was, you forgiving as opposed to asking, right? You forgiving as opposed to asking for forgiveness, simply just have to do that, right? You have to release all the negative stuff and everything else. If you're going to apologize, and again, that's because you want to reconcile and fix the situation or restore the situation in some way, no apology really has the weight it needs to have without some way of describing that you know what you did. Okay, you don't just go and say, well, I'm sorry. Because my experience, the vast majority of the time, that's just a person saying what they think they need to say so they can move on. It's not really owning it. You're in the middle of a fight, and the person's like, well, I said I'm sorry. Right, because you thought that would end the argument. But you never said anything to convince me that you actually were apologizing for what you did and owning it. Okay? Did that answer it, Michaela? Okay. So the whole point is that you must, to genuinely apologize, say, I'm sorry because I did this and I realized that was wrong and it hurt your feelings or whatever it was. You have to communicate. So when my children got punished, when they were little, I would put them in timeout or whatever. I then would go in at the end of the punishment, have them come over to me and I'd say, okay, all right, do you understand why you were here? Yes, okay. Are you sorry for that? Or I would just say, whatever, and I would say, you need to tell me what it is and acknowledge that you know what you did that was wrong. And are you going to make an effort to not do that again, right? I want to make sure that you're understanding what the cause and effect of all of this is, okay? And so I'm terrible at this from the receiving side. I will not take anybody's apology the way you want me to if you don't acknowledge what you did. I'll be like, fine, I don't care. You apologize for what? I want you don't come to me and apologize just because you want the argument to end or you want to think that it just fixes everything. Well, I'm sorry. Think of the way the words come out of your mouth and the actual tone of voice, and you know that nobody's receiving that. That's BS right there, okay? That is, well, I'm sorry. Really? That wasn't convincing, okay? That's the magic words you think end the argument. See, I said I'm sorry, but you never said anything to show you owned it, okay? How do I know you're owning it? All you said was I'm sorry, okay? Sorry for what? And that's annoying as hell to have somebody keep asking you that. So I do that to people sometimes. Because I just want to know. If you're going to apologize and I'm going to accept your apology, what are you apologizing for? What did you do that you're sorry about? And you know what happens 9 times out of 10? They're not actually sorry. They're just trying to get this thing to move on already. Okay? It's sort of a white move of the color code to bring peace and get the thing to just go away. All right? I'm sorry. Good. Now, has it gone away? Can we just move on? But we still have the same problem because nobody owned anything. Okay? So let this just be a lesson to all of you. You want to really fix something and you know that you were wrong about something, or you do want to apologize, don't apologize unless you are sorry. And don't apologize unless you're actually going to own what it was that you're apologizing for. Otherwise, it's garbage. So there's no point in saying it. Because then people will wonder, why are we still fighting? Because I apologized. But no, you didn't. You said the words, I'm sorry. That's not an apology. You just said the words, I'm sorry. An apology explains, I'm sorry that I did this, that hurt you, did this thing to you, whatever it is. And I realized that messed you up in some way or whatever, okay? That's an apology. Are we good with that? All right? So all of you, stop saying you're sorry unless you're actually going to apologize for something specific. Because there's no way to receive that otherwise, you know. And people always go, well, I already apologized. No, you didn't. You said the words, I'm sorry. That's not an apology. If you're interacting with me, I will never accept I'm sorry as an apology. It needs more, okay? It needs more. I need to know what you're sorry for. What did you do that you're apologizing for? Okay, so how do I know if that's going to fix anything for me if you're apologizing for something that's not even what I'm upset about? Because you may not even understand what I'm upset about. Does that ever happen when you fight with anybody? That here you are fighting and everything, and it becomes very clear that you have no idea why you're upset? Well, I don't even understand why you're upset. That's right. That's why we're fighting. You have no idea why I'm upset. All right? And that becomes very problematic. All right, Frederick.
I have a definition that I think I'm reworking that I want to run by you to make sure I put it in the right spot.
Okay.
So it was about the level of attention that is expected for a well-set habit. The problem was that I'd heard somebody say, well, I don't have to think about it. And my brain went, well, it's like you could fall asleep while you're doing it and keep going.
No, I mean, the level of attention is where it becomes a habit. If you want a habit, it means that it's something that, it's when something comes up, that is what you're going to do without having to make a whole lot of conscious effort to decide what you're going to do or not, okay? So it's kind of like, you know, and some of that level of attention is just by default. Like you drive from work to home and work to home and home to work over and over again. At some point, you're doing it without thinking very much.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still thinking, you're not driving off the road. But you're not trying to think about, do I turn here, okay? And do I turn there? Because you've done it thousands of times. So the level of attention is how fast do you want to get to the point where it's on more of an autopilot default of what you do?
Yeah, but because of some of my own experiences, my level of thinking what autopilot was is that it's sleepwalking.
No, not sleepwalking.
And that was
Right.
the issue for me.
Right. Okay, so I'm still, as a matter of fact, one of the things that the goal is when they teach you, for example, how to drive, I use driving is that you no longer have to think about where the radio is, where the mirrors are, and where to look to turn and everything else, because you've practiced it and done it enough that now you spend most of your attention on the other drivers on the road and the other things that are happening so that you can stay safe. It's a little tough to do in the beginning when you're like, I gotta check this mirror, I gotta look at this mirror, where's the brake, where's the gas, where's this, where's that? I wanna turn on the radio, I wanna change the station. I mean, because these are all distractions that until they become automated, you can't then focus on other things. But there's still a level, okay? I just move my arm like this, I didn't have to think about that. I wanna pick up my phone, I just pick it up. You go take a little child's gonna think and their arm's gonna move until they, oh, I got it, and then pick it up, right? So at some point, we don't have to think about all of the details of something, so we're not asleep. We're actually more awake because we're less distracted by these little details, so we can look at bigger things.
So my thinking was that I'm ambidextrous, so I do things with both hands. So it's a little bit like I look at one thing to do, and I set that one hand in motion, and I can, as soon as I set that in motion, I can think about what the look to where the next thing to do is, and that continues to happen.
Correct.
And that's
Correct. So it's not that you're asleep. You're freeing yourself up to be much more broadly effective, because this needs a lot less attention. Okay?
We all know that Abba, he knows the end from the beginning. And he knew what would happen when he and his son decided to create the heavens and the earth and the people in it. He knew we were going to screw up, mess up the world due to Torah breaking. He knew his chosen nation was going to be a challenge. And my biggest question has always been, why did he bother to ever create us? I mean, that's always profound to me, because that shows like not only his love, I also wonder if it shows his red too. Like he was thinking, yes, they're going to screw up, but I'm going to build a bridge to give them a chance to fix it. I'm going to invest in this project until I get the results, because I know that I will reach the results. And he probably believed that it was going to be worth it, even though he knew it was going to happen. So
Exactly.
That's my
All right,
question.
you said that beautifully. Look, I jokingly have said, when I tell my little hallucination about what happened at the beginning of all things, that the Father and the Son got together and going through this whole thing. And I said, for whatever reason, I said, I can understand it. They wanted human beings or beings to live with forever. Okay, so I've made that joke. So just like you said, well, I don't know why, why would he make us knowing as messed up as we are? I don't know, but he has his reasons and his plan, and we're in it, okay? And so we're thankful for that, and we appreciate that. But, but we also know how awesome we are when we're not being, little bratty pains in the butt, right? But we can be really awesome, all of us. And all of you, especially if you have children who you would throttle or hug, whichever way they're being at that moment. But they always have those moments where you just want to scoop them up and hug them, and you really love them, and they're great, okay? And so that's what we are. We're little children that every now and then we have our problematic moments. Hopefully we have more moments where he just wants to scoop us up and hug us, and he loves us because we're great, okay? And that's why he made us, because that's the potential there, okay? Because, all of you have your moments, but most of the time you're pretty awesome. At least my interactions with you, I think you're all pretty awesome, okay? And so that's kind of where we're at. All right, Shira.
Praise Abba. This is really, really exciting. I'm coming into a new place, definitely, after having discovered that my color code is balancing out to be what it really is. And so last night or this morning, I'm trying to remember when you were talking about the colors that are emotionally driven, blue and yellow. Between those two, I'm 91% emotionally driven.
There you go.
However, not anymore, because Father is helping me. And just from being around you for all these years, Rabbi Steve, I have no red in my color code, but I am getting redder.
That's good.
And it's exciting because of, here we are on Shabbat celebrating his creation and looking at the wonderful ways that he created us. And I just picture that whole thing about Michelangelo and how he makes his sculptures. I just chip away at everything that doesn't look like Yeshua.
Right.
And I love that analogy. So I just want to share one little testimony that is really going to make this year special for me, and that is the whole thing about smoking. You just quit.
Right.
Well, with me, it's procrastinating, getting lost in brain games or YouTube interest videos and all kinds of different things, knowing that there's a specific assignment that Father's giving me, knowing that he's shown me how I'm supposed to spend my golden years and some of the things that are supposed to be produced during that time to bless other people. Why am I just doing this? Why am I not, I'm just making little baby steps. I need to push forward. And so I reached a place where I was so disgusted with myself about this, I just quit.
Good.
I just quit. And it's a different place. I mean, you can get there. You can get there if you're really plugging away and not giving up. Because I've had, I would have 3 not so productive days, and then a day would I just, like a buzzsaw. And then a week of unproductive days, and then 1 or 2 good ones. And now, for the last 3 weeks, I've been having good day, good day, good day, good day, reordering my daily habits because I got disgusted enough. Because I reached that place. If life is gonna be worth living the rest of my life, I'm gonna have to just quit procrastinating and just do it. And it's been really exciting. Really exciting.
Amen.
I just want to share that testimony, but I also want to share so many victories over realizing, okay, I'm emotionally based, I do conclusion jumping, I do, feelings of rejection or, all of that. And just accepting that's natural for my personality. INFJ, it's natural for my personality. And it doesn't have to stay that way. And so the sense of peace is great. And I just want to thank you for your leadership and counsel and all the great stuff that comes.
You're very welcome. Thank you. All right, so let me just throw this out there for all of you. Okay, first of all, one of the things that Shira said was that she got disgusted or whatever, she reached that level. This was in the level up class, a lot of other teachers teach this. You are exactly at the highest point that you're willing to tolerate, or the lowest point you're willing to tolerate. Let's put it that way. You're not gonna be anywhere beyond what you tolerate. As soon as you don't tolerate anymore, you can go higher. Do you understand? You're always gonna fall down and default back to whatever is the level of tolerance. Shira got to a point where she was no longer tolerant of that place. Okay, you can use whatever language. She said she was disgusted with herself or whatever, but the point is she was no longer willing to tolerate that standard of effort, work, whatever she was trying to accomplish, okay? So whatever your standard of living is, your health is, whatever it is, you're going to be at the level you tolerate. Okay? Otherwise, you would be making much more effort to fix the problem to a different level. Okay? So until you are motivated enough, mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore type of stuff, okay, you're going to still stay mostly where you are. The other thing is, again, I know we talk about these personality things. You were supposed to, starting point, understand where you are by default starting point. You were then supposed to maximize all the positives of all the colors and incorporate them into you and work in minimizing any negatives that you already have. That was just from the colors. But you could do this with the Myers-Briggs letters too. I do lots of blue things, but I do them sort of from a red driving perspective. I know I need to do something, okay? So some of the things I do are blue things, but I don't do it because I have any blue in my makeup. It's because I've learned that these are effective things to do, and I have to kind of get my head to think in a more blue way to do certain things, or a white way, because I'm missing 2 colors. And that was the intention that Dr. Hartman had when he wrote the book. He wrote a second book, which was about what do you do now? Well, what do you do now is you look at the colors you have, maximize all the positives, minimize the negatives, and then anything that you're missing from the other ones, go grab the positives from those colors. Don't grab any of the negatives from those colors, but bring in the positive. Now, most people have 4 colors, so get rid of all the negatives that you can and add all the positives from all 4 so that you can choose whatever one is needed in any situation to function in. And that could be the same thing for any of the other personality ways of doing it. So it's a starting point is my point, all right? Just make sure that you are treating it like a starting point. It's not an ending point. It's trying to just say, in this window of time, right this moment when you took the test, this is where you are, okay? So you can understand how you got here, where you are, and what you've been doing. Now, you can choose to be a whole different thing. So like Shira said, her whole color makeup is getting more balanced and all kinds of things happening. Now, when you take the test, you may get still the same makeup because you're answering your default. By default, I'm still what I am. But I can choose to be any color, any time. It just takes more conscious effort, that's all. Problem is we don't usually make the conscious effort because we're in autopilot on most things, okay? And the default just sort of runs. All right, Deirdre, you're going to be the last one.
Yay. Shalom, Rabbi.
Hey.
So I was reading in 2 Corinthians chapter 12.
You're going to bring up a verse?
I know, shocking.
Seems kind of odd in this discussion. All right, go ahead. 2 Corinthians.
Maybe that's why it's good that I'm last, so that I can.
2 Corinthians.
Okay, verses 7 through 10, and Shaul is talking
What
about chapter 12. Sorry.
12. Okay, 7 through 10. All right.
And Shaul was talking about the thorn in his flesh, and he says, "Concerning this, I pled with the master 3 times to take it away from me. And he said to me, my favor is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness.
Yeah.
Most gladly then I shall rather boast in my weakness so that the power of Messiah rests in me. I take pleasure in weakness." He says, when I am weak, I am then strong.
Yes.
So am I correct in understanding that Yahweh is basically telling us, I've given you these things to struggle with. I've given you these things that affect you. But understand that you have my favor. So what you're struggling with should not be as important as the fact that you've got my favor.
No, I mean, it's, well, partially. But I mean, the thing is, he's trying to say, look, if I didn't have anything that was obvious to struggle with, I could get complacent. Okay, I could have some pride and ego come in and think I've arrived. So when he says weakness, it's not that he's weak. It's just saying I have this thing that is there to keep me aware that I've not arrived. I think it's a better way to look at it. This thing is there as a little thorn to remind me you still got stuff to work on. Don't ever think you've arrived. And that's where I'm strong. And Yahweh's saying, well, my favor, okay, up to this point is good enough that, otherwise, I've already shown you enough favor that I've called you out of this world. I've given you a popped bubble. I've opened your eyes to different things. I've given you a task to do, whatever. That should be sufficient. Well, but I want this thorn in my side to go away. Well, but I have a purpose for that thorn. Okay, it's there to keep you humble. And that's the way he explains it, right?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let me say one last thing before we close, okay? And that is, for those of you that are watching, you may be thinking, well, that's kind of odd. I kind of tuned in on a Shabbat, and mostly they were talking about people things and didn't hear a lot of scriptural references. You know why that is the case? Because these people all have a teacher that already taught all of those things that people would normally ask. And they've listened to it. Because most of what you would expect to be asked, I would just say, did you not listen to the teaching? Right? So the teachings answer the question. So I'm just saying is, and that's not bragging on me, I'm just saying is, in case you're wondering, wow, they didn't really ask a lot of Bible stuff. Well, because they've got 600 teachings that answer all those questions already online. Over 600, okay? So if you're new, you might want to just, anything that you had a question about, there are teachings to answer all those questions, okay? That is the purpose of the teachings. I don't just do teachings because they're required or standard or interesting. I do the ones that answer all those questions so that you have a reference library to go to for any of the questions you may have. There's a teaching for it, okay? So, because it hit me all of a sudden as we went through all of this that you guys are talking about what you're really struggling with, and you're not struggling with information from here because I've given you that information. So I was very proud of you from that point of view. But somebody new may be watching going, where's all the Bible questions? These people have already asked all them. Most of the people here have been with me for a little bit. And they've all listened to the teachings. So I already have those answers, okay? So just, and the newer people are not gonna just feel confident necessarily to come up to the microphone. So that's why you don't get as many of those questions. So I just thought I'd put that out there because some people may be wondering, this is kind of odd. Actually, Zone 2 went that way, Zone 3 went that way, because so many who are coming now have listened to the teachings and have gotten their questions answered. Okay, and that's beautiful, and I'm really proud of you. Good job, all right? And I think you're also recognizing that the more difficult thing is to work on you. And that's what you guys are mostly asking about, how you're struggling and working on you. All right, so that's the end of Zone 1. Appreciate that very much, everybody. Good job.